Institute. So I'll be the chair for today's session. And the session is titled Engaging Adolescents and Youth in True Equitable Partnerships, Global Insights. While there's a lot of talk about how to bring children, adolescents, and youth into conversations around programming and research spaces, I think it's important to reflect on how these processes require special care, specific attention, and strategies to make this experience meaningful for those young people. So today we've lined up a group of really amazing speakers. They bring a range of diverse, relevant experience across the field of youth engagement, bringing in theoretical, methodological, and field-based experience. So we hope that this webinar today will be a valuable space for learning. We have about 90 minutes ahead of us where we'll discuss a number of topics kind of loosely related to meaningful youth engagement. And each of the 4 presentations will be around 15 minutes in length. So we hope that there will be some time for questions at the end. If you have any questions over the course of the session, also please feel free to type in the chat, and I'll collate these to ask our presenters later. Just the last bit of housekeeping, please keep yourselves muted during the presentations. And if you have any questions, you can just type them in the chat. Thanks so much. So I'm going to now be introducing our first presenter. Fabio Freixa works at UNICEF as an Adolescent Development and Participation Manager, supporting adolescent participation in UNICEF programs on health, education, and protection from violence at a global level. His area of focus includes developing tools and standards for adolescent civic engagement, providing technical assistance to UNICEF regional and country offices, and building partnership with youth-led organizations and strengthening staff capacity. So Fabio, over to you.
Thank you very much, Christina. Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be in this webinar today and discuss about meaningful engagement, meaningful adolescent and youth engagement. Just give me a moment to upload my PowerPoint, and Christina, please give me a sign when this becomes visible.
Will do. Thanks, Fabio. We can see your screen now. Great.
Fantastic. So let us get started. The title of this presentation is Meaningful Youth Engagement, what it means and how to support it. My objective for this presentation is to drive you through the process that we had in our office, the office working on adolescent and youth participation at UNICEF, to make something quite complex into something very, very simple or exceptionally simple. So my hidden agenda for this presentation is that at the end, I would nearly wish you think, oh, is that simple? Is that it? And in that sense, it would mean that we did achieve the result of transforming something complicated, maybe difficult to understand, into something very simple. So here we go. Meaningful participation. Let us start by defining what that means. Now, if you Google it or if you do your academic research, good luck. There are millions of different frameworks, of different points of views. It is a very complicated field to get some clarity on. We did our homework, and after many back and forth consultation with the experts, we landed on this model by Laura Lundy about the features of meaningful participation for children. So this was designed originally for children, but we agreed that it was relevant for adolescent and youth as well. So what Laura Lundy in her paper from 2007 said is that these 4 features need to be in place for participation to be considered meaningful. And these are space, so having a safe space where adolescent and youth can learn, plan, decide what to do. The second one is voice, so a mean to amplify their voice to be heard by society. Third element is audience, an audience of adult decision makers that would listen to them. And the fourth is influence. So these adults not only listen, but also take action. The difference between audience and influence is typically, you know, somebody takes the floor at a conference, they speak, thank you very much for your words, goodbye, and that's it. While the fourth step, influence, is when actually something happens, something is done with what the adolescent or the youth have said. Now, Lara Lundy says that in order for participation to be meaningful, you need to have them all. Now, let us pause for a moment. Let's put this in the back for a moment, because we're going to get back and challenge only this assumption by Lara Lundy, that all of them must be present in order for participation to be meaningful. Now, we're going to move to the next slide. And this is about the ways in which young people engage. Here was another month's worth conversation and research, and our office landed on these 4 categories, and we now feel pretty confident. We haven't found instances of examples that don't fall into one of these 4 categories. So this as well, I would consider a main achievement from our team in clarifying about youth engagement. And these are the 4 ways. The first one, provision of services to communities. So this is when young people, they just do it. They just try to fix an issue themselves. So you can think of adolescent and youth, I don't know, distributing condoms to prevent from, you know, sexual transmitted disease, or doing peer-to-peer mental health conversation with their peers. So like, they don't ask anything to adults, they just do it. The second one is awareness raising. I don't think there's much to say about it. They just go off in communities and they raise awareness about a specific topic. The third is advocacy. So they ask to adult decision makers for a change. But when we call it advocacy, they are actually sitting outside of the table. They're not there making decisions. They ask from outside. And the last is actually they are inside, they are in the room, and they are participating in decision-making mechanisms. So there are these 4 ways in which young people can engage. Now, the magic is that we actually realize that there is a very good match between the Lundy model and these 4 ways of engaging. And this bears implication for us when we need to plan what to do exactly to support adolescent and young people in their participation. So let's unpack this better one by one. Yeah, this was the transition slide. And here, the first one, young people providing services to community. So the real example that we recently worked on, Ukrainian crisis, we had a contract with the Scouts, and they were providing essential services to refugees that were escaping from Ukraine. How did we support them? We provided space for them, for the Scouts to coordinate, organize their plans. It was both physical or virtual. We provided them capacity building about what are the needs of refugees, how to talk to a refugee, what are the rights of refugees in these different countries, in Poland, in Czech Republic, so that they would know, they would have, you know, the right background knowledge to manage the situation. And we provided financial resources. Now, the last box, what is the corresponding feature of meaningful participation? Whoops, it is space. So all we did here was to provide basically a safe space for them to plan, plus financial resources, capacity building. So this matches with space. Second example, young people conducting awareness raising. Real example here is COVID. So of course, we know, we have seen this a lot, young people promoting COVID prevention behavior in their communities. UNICEF has worked a lot with them. So how did we support them? Well, we provided everything that was already discussed and described into the previous slide, plus we provide them platforms to amplify their voices. So this could have been UNICEF media channels, but also it could have been, sorry, the slide is animated and is on live, but also it could have been, you know, giving them access to media, mass media, or to community media type of channels. Now you already saw the animation. What is the corresponding feature of meaningful participation here? It is voice. Next, young people conduct advocacy themselves. Example, we are working a lot with young people advocating to integrate climate change into secondary school curriculum. We're doing this across few countries in this moment. How do we support them? Well, we do all the things that we did in the previous two slides, plus in the case of advocacy, sorry, I'm not even touching the computer, it keeps moving. We are brokering with governmental stakeholder and partners. Young people love it. So basically they want to collaborate with UNICEF because when it is UNICEF calling for a meeting with the Minister of Education, the Minister of Education actually comes. When it is young people on their own, Minister of Education often doesn't even reply to their email. And of course, there is the matching feature of meaningful participation, which is audience. So in this case, our role is to make sure that there is an audience for the advocacy that young people want to do. But let's do not forget, we also provide them with a safe space, with capacity building, with a channel for audience, channel for amplifying their voices. And now we are providing them an audience of decision makers that will listen to their instances. The last one is participation in decision-making mechanism. And we have an example here with COP28 is on the way, and young people are very often more and more participating in the negotiation processes. So what we do to support that, we advocate for young people to have a seat at the table. We provide batches for them to actually access in the areas where the negotiation is happening. We make sure that their voices makes into the minutes, and then after the meeting is over, we keep advocating for the voices be accounted for. What is the corresponding feature? It is influence. So this was a quick overview of the four means of characteristic of meaningful engagement and the four matching the four ways for young people to engage. So in a synthesis, the Lundy model is our main reference. It defines four features of meaningful engagement. Meaningful engagement can happen in four ways: by young people, provision of services, awareness, advocacy, and participation in decision making. Each of them corresponds to one of the Lundy feature, and this is a nice graph synthesizing what I just mentioned. Provision of service to community needs space for planning only. Voice needs space for planning plus, awareness raising needs space for planning plus a channel for amplifying voice. Advocacy needs the previous plus, the slide is self-animated, it's really frustrating. It moves ahead without me touching it. And influence needs all the above, Participation decision-making mechanism needs all the above plus following up with decision makers so that the participation has an impact and it is influencing decisions of adults, stakeholders. Each way of meaningful engagement calls for a specific type of support, which was described in the previous slide. So this is it. And what I just presented is about a couple of years of cogitation and planning to actually align these two important frameworks so that we have some very concrete specification when it comes to how to support specifically meaningful youth engagement of young people. Thank you very much. Back to you, Christina.
Thank you so much, Fabio. That was really great. I think it's really set us up really nicely to think about some of the other presentations as well, giving us a framework to think about what meaningful engagement means and what youth-driven engagement in issues that matter to them can look like. So thanks for that great and very simple, very clear overview. Next up, we're going to hear from Dr. Mandi Tembo. She's a public health specialist with a research focus on menstrual health, adolescent sexual and reproductive health service delivery, and public engagement. She is currently a Reckitt Global Health Institute postdoc fellow, leading an innovative project focusing on the co-creation of a menstrual health toolkit with women, healthcare providers, and other relevant stakeholders in rural and urban communities across Zimbabwe. She's also the public engagement lead for the Health Research Unit Zimbabwe through ZIM, and is involved in several public engagement research projects across Zimbabwe, including the Youth Researchers Academy and the Art of Health, which we'll hear a little bit more about in her presentation. She holds a PhD in epidemiology from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, an MSc in Global Health and Development from UCL, and a BA in Public Health and Women's Gender Studies. Thank you, Lundy. Over to you.
Thank you so much for that. I'm gonna try and share my screen. Can everybody see that?
Great.
Okay, awesome. So thank you so much for that comprehensive bio. So I will be presenting on some of the strategies on effective youth-focused research and engagement. I think it came in really great after a really great presentation from Fabio, because we'll be giving hopefully some examples of studies that have, or innovations that have addressed one or all of the components that were discussed. Okay, so we're talking about some of the work that we've done in Zimbabwe as part of the Health Research Unit. And the reason why we do a lot of work around youth and youth research is that we felt that youth engagement was integral to developing and implementing interventions that are both sustainable and acceptable. And we wanted to use innovative methods that allowed for youth to meaningfully engage in designing interventions, implementing the interventions, and serving the needs of young people in their communities. And we wrote this up in a paper that looks at the Youth Researchers Academy that I'll touch on a little bit later, and really goes through some of the methodology that we use to implement that, and some of the lessons learned that would help for replicable interventions in different settings. So some of the examples of what we do and how we do is we focus on three main components: training and mentorship. So we have been very intentional in making sure that the people that lead the studies, whether it's in the design or in the implementation from the research perspective, but also on the ground, are young people. We have a huge body of master students that conduct research, PhD students and postdocs that are all youth. And then also supervised by more experienced researchers. We then make sure that the work that we're doing is youth focused, so addressing the needs of youth in Zimbabwe. An example that I'll speak about today is the Youth Researchers Academy. I'll also touch on very briefly 2 clinical trials that we ran in Zimbabwe over the last 3 years called Chiedza and Stitch. And then we'll go into some of the public engagement activities such as science clubs in schools and the Art of Health competition, which was an innovative, started off in Zimbabwe, but has now had global interpretations or rounds where we're looking at asking youth what health looks like to them, what reproductive health looks like to them, what global health and climate change looks like to them in terms of art, design, and mixed media. So for the trials, the 2 examples I'll speak on very briefly are Chiedza. And Chiedza was looking to provide community-based HIV and SRH services to young people. That included co-designed condoms, art initiation and adherence support, HIV testing, menstrual health for women. And we wanted to see if providing a set of services created by and for young people was going to have a population level change in viral load suppression. The other part of that was Stitch, which was within Chiedza, but was looking specifically at STIs. And the reason we did that is because we saw that there was a huge prevalence of STIs amongst young people within our study population. So the next slide has a video on the study, but I won't go into that because it's about 8 minutes long, but hopefully I'll be able to share the slides. And there's also a QR code at the end of the presentation if you'd like to listen to that video that goes into the background of the study, how we implemented it, and also some of the results that we found in that study. The other thing I wanted to speak about was the Youth Researchers Academy. And so the aim of this intervention was to meaningfully engage young people in youth-focused research. And what we did was look for young people that had a keen interest in research, but might not have the opportunity to pursue a master's degree or be part of a research team because they had limited education or limited resources. We then trained those young people comprehensively on different methodologies around research, the importance of research, and then embedded them as part of Chiedza study, Stitch study, the white check study, which I haven't really talked about here, but there are big research trials that were happening in Zimbabwe, and it gave the young people an opportunity to implement some of the lessons they'd learned during the training. These lessons were then disseminated as research findings with stakeholders within the country, and many of the young people are now doing ongoing research as research assistants or youth engagement people in the community. I have a short video that I'll play next that really highlights the work that we did.
So the Youth Research Academy is a 2-week residential program that aims at equipping young people with skills on research methodology, implementation, and dissemination.
So in 2019, we actually had the first Youth Researchers Academy in Zimbabwe. And we learned a lot of lessons there that we've kind of implemented in this project. Last Youth Researchers Academy, it was a 1-week program. This time it's been 2 weeks because we realized we needed more time so that they can really process everything that they're learning. So we took the learnings from that first YRA and we've put them into this one.
In recruiting the young people, we really wanted to put the young people at the center of everything. So it's not just an interview process and we're not asking for CVs. What we did was reach out to a lot of community-based organizations and nonprofits that work with young people. And we tried to be as inclusive as possible. So we reached out to NGOs or CBOs that work with people with disabilities and members of the LGBTQ community. And we had an application that basically asked, are you interested in research? Have you worked with young people before? Why do you think working with young people is important? Why do you think research is important? We narrowed down people based on those answers, and we had a 2-part whole day interview process. So in that day, we had a one-on-one interview with young people where we weren't asking necessarily for them to talk about their research history, but just trying to get to know them. And then we had group activities where we asked young people to create a poster about a community-based organization that was for young people. And so we wanted them to work in groups and really get an idea of who's thinking and intuitively, who's asking questions, who's good at working with others, who has a lot of ideas and speaks their mind, who's about making sure that everybody participates in some way, who's artistic, who's articulate, and that's how we chose our young people. And a lot of our teaching is very practical. So we're not just sitting in a class and writing down notes. It's very much about putting things into practice. So our young people have been traveling around the resort, measuring things, interviewing people, coming up with research questions, reading papers, and really implementing what they're learning on a day-to-day basis.
For the Youth Researchers Academy, what we're hoping that we get and they get out of this is qualified researchers. This is youth who are able to do research about the issues that matter to them, and to have a cohort of young people who are qualified and trained to gather rigorous, valid, quality research that we can use on even multinational and global platforms to change policies and to change programs, so that people like us who work in adolescent health, who work in youth's health, can actually have young people beside us doing it. So that we are not tokenistic in how we engage with young people, but we know that they can actually produce the kind of work that we need so that we can inform policies and programs and change.
The mentors are really such great people. They use different methods of teaching. They are very fun people. They are vibrant. They are accommodative. They are integrative. They don't take the fact that we're younger than them or we're less qualified than them. They just look at us like we're the same.
I think if it's possible, the YRA should be expanded in all parts of Zimbabwe and all parts of the world, as it is giving the youth the chance to make a difference in research.
The Research Academy has been a long journey, but one that's very detailed and innovative. And then after that, they will go into a 3-month-long internship where they will work with a mentor to implement research with young people, for young people. And then at the end of that, they will have a dissemination meeting with stakeholders where they'll be able to talk about their whole process, what they learned, what the experience meant for them, and also about the research projects that they took on, and how their research has an impact over time.
We are happy to be associated with the work of the Youth Research Academy, in that it is showing an initiative in capacitating young people for them to make a meaningful contribution to the development of the nation.
So for me, this has been a very good experience. One, teaching me to be a mentor, but two, seeing these young people grow. And I think we need more of these. The experience as a whole, I think it was great to see the young people go through the process. They really, really enjoyed it. It was good to see them boost their confidence. When they started off, they were a bit unsure of themselves, unsure about what research was, and then to see it today at the end of the dissemination meeting, them being able to confidently present their really, really important research findings to a group of people, and to make recommendations that are useful to ongoing research projects or to even policymakers, was just really amazing. As a mentor, I feel like I almost shed a tear towards the end.
So we hope that we continue to produce material that shows that when you actually train young people to collect data and they analyze it and they can disseminate it when it's issues that have to do with them, that it works for actually having really good programs for young people. So our hope, at least from the mentor side, is that we're able to do this annually, and this is 2.0. So hopefully in 2022, we'll be doing a Youth Researchers Academy 3.0.
The next project that I wanted to highlight, again in a very short video, I promise it's shorter than the first one, is the Art of Health competition, which highlights some of the public engagement activities that we do using social media.
The Art of Health is a Wellcome Trust-funded public engagement project by the Health Research Unit Zimbabwe, or through ZIM, at the Biomedical Research and Training Institute, in partnership with the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine and Ardent Creative. It harnesses the power of the creative arts to effectively engage young people in Zimbabwe and beyond on issues of health and well-being. Engaging young people on health issues can be difficult. The subject matter may not be intriguing or seem of little importance. How can we make health interesting, cool, and fun? The Art of Health packages health messaging in the creative arts such as music, drama, dance, and design projects made by young people for young people. In so doing, we've been able to more effectively engage young people and have them be key stakeholders in vital health and well-being discourse. In 2020, we launched the Art of Health as a pilot in 3 communities in Zimbabwe to address the challenges that we were facing in engaging young males in accessing health services. Packaged as a competition, the Art of Health was able to increase the amount, intensity, and effectiveness of which we were able to engage young people in those communities. Following the success of this, we launched the Art of Health as a national competition in 2021, consisting of 3 creative categories: design, art, music, and drama. We received 1,153 entries. These were shortlisted into 39 finalists who went through a mentorship stage before creating final health-themed projects. In the art category, participants were given the materials needed to create health-themed artwork. In the music category, participants wrote, recorded songs, and produced health-themed music videos. In the drama category, participants wrote and acted in their own health-themed short films. Health topics ranging from emotional, physical, mental, financial well-being, and much more were covered. The engagement level was also very high. These were then put on social media for public vote, and winners were announced. In 2020, we produced a stage play called Taura. Taura means speak out in the Zimbabwean language Shona, and it was all about young people speaking out about their lived experiences in their communities where their health was concerned. This resulted in a play that was showcased on multiple nights to packed houses in Zimbabwe's 2 largest theaters, as well as its largest university, the University of Zimbabwe. Accompanying Taura, we also hosted an art exhibition featuring the artwork of talented young individuals, which was auctioned off. 100% of these proceeds went to the young people. We've collaborated with many groups, starting with Alice HTM Center on Climate Change and Planetary Health. We held the Breathe In competition that asked young people to address the impact that they believed clean air could bring to the health and well-being of young people in Zimbabwe. We also had the Heating Up competition that asked young people to assess the effects of heat waves, and drought on the health and well-being of young Zimbabweans. The creative arts are an impactful way of engaging young people. The Art of Health has now gone global. We are currently running a global Art of Health competition for the STI and HIV World Congress taking place in Chicago this July. Through this, people from around the world have been expressing their views and opinions on sexual health through art. There are a lot more exciting activities planned for the Art of Health, beginning with the second global competition later this year, so stay tuned.
So thank you. I hope I had enough time to go through 2 more slides. Great. So in terms of what that has done over time, we have several publications looking at HIV and SRH amongst young people, which are available on our website. And one of the manuscripts that we've written on how we meaningfully engage with young people was actually co-authored by young people themselves as part of the Youth Researchers Academy. We presented many of our findings at global and international festivals, and will continue with the upcoming Global Forum for Adolescents, where our session will focus on menstrual health, and will highlight the menstrual health intervention, which was part of Chiedza. We've been able to also collaborate with others across the globe and do different adaptations of programs such as the Youth Researchers Academy, one that has focused on youth with disabilities in Uganda, and another one that is focused purely on HIV with partners in Zimbabwe. Again, as I said in the video, a lot of the people that have engaged in our youth activities, our research and our public engagement activities have gone on to continue to work within the research realm as research assistants, as youth advocates and other areas. And we're really, really proud of the progress that they've made. Our takeaways is that it's really important to document what you've done so that people can learn from your findings, avoid the mistakes, learn from what went well, and also be able to share with others. Part of our work has really helped us building communities in a very meaningful way, and we continue to work with them, and that we were able to really show how context is important. And then the last thing, and I think that was highlighted in the first presentation, is that we can keep it simple. It doesn't have to be complicated to be good. Thank you for listening. There's a QR code for our work, but you can also find all these videos and also all the resources we've used on our website.
Thanks so much, Mandy. It was great. And I totally agree. I think there were a lot of kind of parallels and specific examples that your presentation was able to draw out, and really kind of positioning some of this youth engagement conversation in a research space, and also in the space where you can see a lot of direct impact happening. So thanks so much for sharing your work. I'm going to now introduce our next speakers. So we have Munah Al-Hassanieh and Roni Chaya. They're clinical psychologists and research associates at Lebanese American University in Lebanon. They were part of a team of youth leaders who facilitated the Yes to Emotions in Youth program, also known as YEA. And they're passionate about engaging and empowering young people to drive innovative projects and initiatives in the field of mental health. So I'm going to ask them to present. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. I just need one moment to share the presentation. Okay. You can see the presentation, right?
Correct. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So hello, everyone. My name is Munah Al-Hassanieh, and I will be presenting the findings and the project that we actually implemented, which is called Yes to Emotions in Youth, YEA for short, in Lebanon, specifically in underprivileged youth and in public schools. So I will be presenting this alongside my colleague, who is Roni Chaya as well. So just to give you a little bit of context or the situation in Lebanon, basically, I would just like to let you know about the cultural aspect in terms of Lebanon. So Lebanon is still for a sort a traditional country. For instance, there are certain culturally traditional gender roles which are pervasive. For instance, young female youths are confined in a certain way in terms of expression, whereas young boys have the ability to be more free in terms of their decisions and actions in the society. So this is something that is very prevalent in our culture. In terms of the social aspect, we can note that in terms of emotional expression, basically, in the youth, it differs between also amongst genders, between females and males, or young boys or young girls. We notice that there's this stereotype that young boys express their needs or their demands through violence or through aggression. We notice this that it's something that is like a plague of a sort. So whereas in young youth or the young female audience, we notice that they are more on the side of emotional expression and being more in touch with their emotions. In terms of the political aspect, Lebanon is currently experiencing political instability in terms of poverty as well. There are several regular gun conflicts occurring on a regular basis, and also the infamous Beirut port explosion, which all led to a sort of instability inside the country and specifically on the youth. So these are some of the reasons why that we aim to do something about this. Okay, and hence yay. Ronnie, please.
Yes. Can you hear me well, by the way? Okay.
Sorry?
Great. Yes, can you hear me, I'm asking?
Perfectly.
Yes.
Great, perfect. So thank you, Munah, for all these reasons that were mentioned by my colleague. Basically, this is what led us to come up with YEA, or the Yes to Emotions and Youth program. We saw that boys, for instance, tend to hide their emotions. They tend to suppress their emotions, tend to live in denial sometimes, while females maybe were more in touch with their emotions, but weren't knowing how to deal with them properly. So that's why a team of experts in emotional intelligence led us as researchers and as youth leaders to come up with this project based on material that was already provided by the researchers themselves. The training basically aimed to develop these 5 competencies that you see on the side: identification of emotions, understanding emotions, expressing emotions, regulating them, and utilizing these emotions. In order to better understand what these youth in public schools, in Lebanese public schools, what were they facing, what they were dealing with, especially these challenges that they were dealing with, we went ahead and did a focus group with them to better understand their situation. And based on the results of this focus group, we were able to modify the training, maybe add some things to the training before the final implementation. So we went ahead and did a small pilot study before going ahead and doing the final implementation, which consisted of 11 sessions within the public schools with the youth. Before starting with the 11 sessions, we asked them to fill out a questionnaire with different psychological self-reported measures. And then we implemented the 11 sessions, and then we asked them to fill the same questionnaire again, just to see the impact of the program on the youth. The sessions basically included a lot of role playing, a lot of interaction, interpersonal games or discussions, a lot of meditation trainings, like gratitude trainings, breathing techniques. So a lot of techniques that were scientifically proven to improve the mental health of the youth. We also asked them to journal often, like take with them homework, basically to journal about their emotions, etc. So that's basically what we did. Next, please. Okay, so we're talking about leadership and how to engage youth. So basically, part of our role was to empower the youth, giving them the safe space to discuss things that they weren't able to discuss with their families or friends outside of school. Or so we gave them the space to discuss stuff with us. We ourselves as leaders were led by researchers or experts in the field, and at the same time we were leading these youth to find healthy alternatives to the challenges that they were facing, to role model certain things, how to act in certain situations. These will be discussed more by my colleague in the coming slide. And we also gave them this chance to, if they wanted to vent privately, so they can, we offered them the option to talk to us privately outside the classroom, away from their friends, in case they were embarrassed or shy. So we had the chance to give them advice. So they viewed us as leaders who were able to encourage them and empower them. And that was very motivating for us and them at the same time. And that's basically it. Back to you, Munah.
Thank you, Ronnie. So specifically, following through on what my colleague just said, we aim to engage the youth through four major ways, basically, which is the first, role modeling. As Ronnie said, role modeling is something that is very important to us. It was very important to be authentic in terms of the applying the core message of the program and how to apply the 5 facets of the emotional intelligence, trait emotional intelligence, basically. And going back to emotional expression, for instance, it was important for us to role model how to properly emotionally express certain emotions, under the right circumstance and the right context. The other method was through motivation. It was very important to constantly motivate them because emotional intelligence is such a new concept to them, and it is a challenge to get the youth to stay engaged and to grasp the concept. So it was very important for us to constantly motivate them and to provide support. Third, the providing psychosocial support, as Ronnie said, it was one of our main goals to provide psychosocial support for people, especially young boys who need it, who are incapable of properly expressing or identifying or utilizing their emotions. So it was important for us to dedicate a certain set amount of time to them throughout the program for them to vent properly. And going back to Mr. Fabio's presentation, it was very important for us to provide a safe space for the youth to properly express. So even as we were explaining the modules and the presentations, some did not have the if you want, I don't want to say the courage, but it was such a foreign concept that it was awkward for them to speak out loud. So it was important for us to provide a safe space for them to voice out their concerns. These are some of the testimonials. I would like to read one and I will highlight the others. These are very positive testimonials. For instance, the first one says, after the training, I had a better understanding of myself and others and became more capable of controlling my emotions and calming myself when I needed to. As such, I suggest that this training becomes integrated in the school's curriculum because I think that it's important for every person to be emotionally intelligent, to be able to handle life's difficulties. We notice as well, like for instance, in the other one, problem solving and finding solutions, control over my own emotions and thoughts. So we can see the impact through their own words. Back to you, Ronnie.
Thank you, Munah. So basically, here are some of the maybe quantitative results that we've seen as a result of this training. So if we can go ahead and see the first graph. So I'll be presenting a few graphs that represent the changes. Maybe first of all, on the emotional intelligence. So this program was based on emotional intelligence. So as you can see, we had a control group, which is the line in blue, and the line in red was the experimental group who got the training. So in the control group, we see that their emotional intelligence kind of went down a bit, but for those who went through the training, their emotional intelligence surged highly, and that's proof of the impact of the training on the youth. Next. So yeah, here's another emotional intelligence scale that we used. So this is more basically related to the 5 competencies that I talked about: the identification, expression, understanding of emotions. So basically, as you can see here, they were better able to basically identify their emotions or use these 5 competencies properly after this program. So by the way, just to point out, point 1, or the starting point, is before the program, and point 2 is after the program. Okay, next. And on an intrapersonal level, with the different competencies, we can also see that they were able to do better on this aspect. And next as well. On the interpersonal, so between them and friends, between them and family members, they also reported that they were doing better after the program ended. Okay. So I also mentioned about coping. We focus as well on coping, how to deal with life challenges. So as you can see, the adaptive coping skills of these youths also improved after this training program. And next as well. Their maladaptive coping techniques reduced. When we talk about maladaptive coping, whether we're talking about maybe substance use, alcohol use, anything like living in denial, suppressing emotions. So that all went down after the training. Next. They went ahead and started seeking support as well from other family members, friends. So that was an impact that the training had on the youth as well. Moving on. Next, we had the psychological well-being. As in general, the well-being of the youth improved, surged highly as well. And if you see in comparison to the control group who didn't receive the training, you can see that they weren't impacted throughout these like 3 months of training that the experimental group were having. Next. And anxiety levels also dropped for those who went through the program, and same for the depression. And the next slide. So the depression also decreased greatly after the program as well. Okay, that's basically like smaller measures or subscales throughout the project, but these were the major figures. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ronnie. So the final slide that we would like to talk about is implementing the training in a vulnerable context. I would just like to talk about certain strands of the context, the general context. For instance, throughout our implementation, we note that certain students or a lot of the students had their lives hugely or majorly impacted by the program. Specifically, and this is also evidenced by the results that Ronnie just mentioned. So they called out, or they voiced, or they advocated for having this program implemented as a regular part of the Lebanese curriculum, which is something very, very positive, and we are proud to have achieved. The second point is the teachers and principals. We noted how things could have been even more better if teachers are also emotionally intelligent with regards to their interactions between the students or between themselves, you know, teacher or teacher-student. They could also benefit from a program which aimed to foster their emotional intelligence or traits. In terms of the resources, we had an issue with regards to, if you want, the basic resources such as PowerPoint or electricity. It was an issue with regards to not being able to provide the full effectiveness of the program sometimes because of these issues. So this is something that people who would like to pursue implementing projects should take into consideration. The fourth point is the work over learning. And this is unfortunate, basically, because in Lebanon, a lot of these students don't have the opportunity to devote themselves to learning. So we know that a lot of these students actually had to skip school sometimes just to go to work, to make a living, a day-to-day living, to be able to eat. So this is something as well to take into consideration, and we did actually. The exposure to new concepts, as I stated before, emotional intelligence as a concept is relatively new to the Lebanese context. It is important to take into consideration and view how an individual has to progress or proceed in terms of addressing this issue, and how to motivate the students to keep them intrigued by the message, basically. And logistically, the final one is logisticality, which is it was difficult for the students to get to the schools to be able to learn the program. So taking that into consideration, we aimed at, if you want, providing the sessions as many times as possible, and being there for the students at the school, dedicating a specific time as well, in addition to the program, just to explain or answer questions or things like that. And these are some of the, if you want, the challenges or the issues that we faced that we thought that were worth noting as well. So thank you very much for listening. We appreciate the opportunity to share our findings and our program, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was really valuable. And again, a really nice deep dive into some of the concepts that we've been hearing about across the presentation. So really interesting insights. I'd like to just remind the audience, if you have any questions for anyone specifically or more generally, please just pop them into the chat. And I think with that, we'll move on to our final two speakers today, who are presenting again together. So Yusra Price is an interdisciplinary independent anthropologist, facilitator, and qualitative researcher. She is currently a junior research fellow at the Accelerate Hub within the Center for Social Science Research at University of Cape Town, and she's involved in research focused on adolescents and young adults. She specializes in arts-based methods, participatory approaches, and storytelling, all of which shape her approach to research and engagement. And she further values inclusive and collaborative research designs that emphasize the agency of people in research and reciprocity. And Mildred Tabang, who's joining her today, is a young researcher who has previously worked as a research assistant and senior researcher with the University of Oxford. She has close to a decade of experience in planning, coordinating, and implementing qualitative and quantitative components of health research projects. Alongside this research experience, she also has practical experience as a community healthcare worker, peer supporter, and a young mother who has achieved advocacy for public health through research and policy change. And being a young woman and a mother to her daughter, Mildred is passionate about making a difference and paving a way for women to have a voice and a better tomorrow in all their diversity, especially girls. So thank you both, and looking forward to your presentation.
What's the, okay. Is it presenting?
We can see it is presenting, but we can also see your slides on the side. So I don't know if you want to switch view.
I think I switched to the full view.
We're just seeing it still with the slides on the side. So maybe just if you go to slideshow.
Imagine I'm struggling with this.
It's okay.
Slideshow from the beginning. Better?
Hasn't changed yet. I don't know why.
I don't know why. Unless, oh, wait. Wait. And now? I mean, anyway, it's fine. It's just.
And we're happy to use this view if that's easiest for you. Or I can also present. You can just let me know what you prefer.
Oh, she has it. I don't know why it's doing, but let me just stop and then retry quickly. So share.
No problem. It's the same view as before, but I'm happy for you to go ahead if you don't mind.
Yeah. Let's just, or you can present on our behalf.
Okay, I can also do that. Let me just open my window now. Can you see?
Nice.
Great.
Okay, well, sorry for a bit of a slow start on the first slideshow. So we are the last presentation. Welcome everybody, and thank you to everyone who has presented so far. It was it really captured my attention throughout. And so we also hope that today's presentation becomes food for thought and discussion, because we occupy a space of research that is almost non-traditional in that we run workshops, we are researchers, but also facilitators, and we use a range of arts-based, participatory inspired methods. And what we have come to learn separately and together is how this idea of meaningful and ethical youth engagement in practice is really challenging and tricky, and something that we both continue to explore. The next slide. So both Mildred and I took part in community-based projects as teenagers, and these two roads that you see here represent each of our journeys until we came together. And through these respective careers, we have each come to an understanding of what meaningful engagement means to us. And we feel that these understandings have greatly shaped our approaches to working with young people. So for me, meaningful engagement is being able to facilitate and hold spaces where young people can feel valued, heard, and encouraged, which is pretty much the same way that I hope, the way I felt when I was 16 and I was part of a program called Peripheral Vision at the District 6 Museum. And for the first time, I was in a space where I could contribute towards discussions, be part of public engagements on topics like racism, xenophobia. And I'll never forget what it was like to investigate issues in the communities, meeting and talking to people who shared my interests, and most importantly, being told that my contribution was both valuable and necessary.
Okay, thank you, Yusra, and thank you everyone for joining us. I'm delighted to be part of this webinar. And for me, meaningful engagement made me go back into my younger days, high school to be specific. And from a young age, once I learned that I was capable of leading and participate, I realized that being part of engagements made me feel joy, hope, and also left me inspired. And for me, I think I concluded by saying that that was a meaningful engagement that I took previously in my past days. So now, together, me and Yusra, we sat down and thought together that how do we elaborate our experiences throughout our work with young people and being young people ourselves as well. So we are happy to elaborate on these experiences, where the rest of the presentation will demonstrate how the sentiments are carried and come through our research practices. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I find that meaningful engagement or meaningful youth engagement comes from changes, and there needs to be a progress. And for me, it comes from an understanding that young people are going through changes and rapidly. And this change is happening so quickly that it's a way that it's creating a bit of confusion and a bit of leaving people not knowing how to really engage. So it is important to accommodate and learn to engage with each other, because young people are ready for change and are capable of playing their roles for the progression of our society. And I wanted to conclude this by highlighting the term dynamic. When we speak of dynamic, sorry, next slide, please. Okay, yeah, sorry, just trying to go with Christina. So I wanted to conclude by highlighting the term dynamic. Yeah, okay. I wanted to conclude to highlight the term dynamic. And when we speak of youth dynamic, youth engagement is centered around that word for me and Yusra. And it's about understanding that we have diverse experiences and that we are still figuring things out, as well as the young people that we engage with. And we also want to acknowledge that whenever the engagement with young people, there's a lot of energies and a lot of demand when it comes to participations and how we're going to navigate that. And as facilitators, we are required to be flexible and skilled. And we often wear many hats, like researchers, heads of being an active listener, a bit of a counseling sometimes before we do research, referrals, and etc. It is important that we gain these skills to make them feel reassured, and that we can and that they can, and we can also find a way for making a space for them to confine in us, reach out to us, and trust that we will handle them with care without judgment. And in practical terms, this entails running workshops where you plan the agenda, not to lead the workshop, but to create a workshop experience that everybody feels part of. For example, if you know that you have a young people or a group of young people coming in for a workshop, but they have traveled a long distance to get to the place that you have decided to have the workshop at, it is important to do a group check-in, like a color check-in where we use colors to describe our moods so that we are all aware of how everybody's feeling before we can start. And we use this as an example. I know it's a logistical example, but sometimes we spend so much time as facilitators or researchers making sure that the context of the programs is going well, or we focus so much on the program itself because we are worried whether young people will engage with the program or whether young people will be able to understand the program. But we have learned throughout our work careers that it starts even from the meeting point, the simple logistics where people are getting off a transport and you are greeting them just there. That's when you do group check-ins, you check in with everyone, whether they want to have a bit of a snack or water, all those things. That's actually where your workshop starts, because when you start right, everything else will somehow, it will end up being a meaningful engagement between you and the young people that you'll be engaging with. Sorry. So we open a space for discussions where we can, as a group, discuss whether we want to start early with a tea or snack before starting the day. And maybe the group would prefer to kickstart and go straight into the workshop and then take a break in between. That way, everybody feels included and there's a dynamic movement to how we facilitate and go throughout the day. The workshop plan of activities still remains though, but it is important to gently throughout the day to do group check-ins where you check when everybody is done with the activities and if they would like a break for a bit, or is everything clear without them feeling like they're falling behind. Because remember, when you're engaging in a setting when there's a group, different groups will come in with different capabilities, and you don't want to create a competition kind of feel within the room. So you want everybody to know that if they are going a slow pace, always reassure them that there's no right or wrong, they're doing okay. So it's more like accommodating all the kind of different capabilities that different groups bring into a workshop. And for a meaningful engagement, it is important to have a space and activities that accommodate diversity and does not select who can do what best. That is why we have activities such as the code of conduct, where as a group we set out housekeeping rules. And we're using these practical kind of examples because they are much more relatable to all settings, can be anywhere in the world. And this is something that we thought that is very useful for us to share as things that we have learned, but to share what worked very well when we were engaging with young people. So going back, we have activities such as the code of conduct, where we are setting out housekeeping rules. And I think we all also agreed before we joined the seminar just now, where we like, okay, the housekeeping stuff, keeping our microphones on mute. So we agree together. So we are aware how we're going to engage throughout the webinar. Similarly, when we engage with young people, we do same kind of thing where we agree together, and agreeing together makes people be or feel part of the workshop without being a visitor or feel like you are hosting them. So you end up having rules. And as a facilitator, since I'll be the one familiar with the workshop layout, I always emphasize or find initiative to start by saying, okay, my first rule is that there's no right or wrong answers. And immediately you can notice the energy in the room shift and changes because everybody's like, oh, okay. So they start thinking out of the box, and then they start writing stuff down. And you can see that, okay, people came in with expectations. And that's where the next point I'm going into now, that we also have an activity whereby we try to mediate expectations so that we can say what expectation we can meet in the workshop, what needs more time, and what is not within our capability. These two activities, among others, are a form of engagement that support a dynamic workshop environment. And then the next one I would like to, one of the elements that we selected on is around flexive. So flexive is such a very complex word, depending on how you understand it or how you want to stretch it. But for the work that we have been doing together with young people, we came to a conclusion that it's the general understanding that whenever whenever there's something around youth engagement, there's an understanding that young people are meant to be taught something, né? And that young people are not capable to but we wanted to emphasize that young people, yes, they are capable to be taught something and they are capable to learn something, but they are also more capable to examine themselves and share their lived experiences for ethical youth interventions needed for young people and done by young people. So as a facilitator who started as a young advisor of research and now a young adult and a mother, and my outlook and experiences of life are different, but that does not limit our ability to come together, think together, and work together. Part of a reflexive facilitation character that is I entail myself, me and Yusra, is that we learn that it's important to be open enough to learn from others, especially young people when we engage with them, and not working against, and also not working again the narratives, but against narratives. I know we are all familiar with the narratives around young people, all about, nothing about us without us, but the narrative is also focusing a lot around age. Like, if you are young, you are more suitable for the requirements that are needed to engage with young people. But the narrative for us, we learned that it's there, but we have also learned that there's more about the engagement, and there's more that it's important to entail the skills to be a facilitator, or to entail the skills to engage with young people more than being a young person and find yourself working with young people. Where are the skills? Where are those things? So those values we understood together and see that it is important. It's going beyond the narrative, and it's very necessary whenever you find yourself or there's anything that can lead to a meaningful youth engagement. Yusra will now jump into the other two elements. Yes, then we'll elaborate more on that.
Thanks, Mildred. So as Mildred described, the dynamic nature of our workshops with young people means, for us at least, that we do not try to control the engagement. So our programs must be versatile, and we must be versatile. So instead, we purposefully introduce and take the groups through activities that negotiate and collectively generate a room rapport, a collective rapport, whatever you want to call it. And exercises, like the code of conduct, for example, holds everyone accountable to the same rules for the day. Then you have activities like the talking wall, group reflections, end of day debriefs that encourage sharing with no judgment. Because ideally, in a context where young people are coming together for the first time, they are uncertain of what to expect out of the day, or they are taken through an unfamiliar process. In my case, it's been storytelling. We want to ensure that they feel comfortable enough to participate, but more importantly, to participate and be present. So our approach to engage young people has been like, over flip charts and pastels and drawing and drama and all of the other types of activities that encourage movement and conversation and sharing. But this has also interestingly shifted other aspects of traditional research, I would say, like the types of data you collect, the logistics that go into organizing things, the timing of everything, who is in the room and facilitating. And what I want to highlight over here is, the ethics. So like I said, we encourage and facilitate activities where young people can share their personal experiences, their opinions, their values, but that also means that we invite differences and in experiences, which can sometimes, it sparks debate, sometimes it leads to a bit of conflict. But overall, what we encourage is a level of vulnerability to share with others. So using creative methods like the river of life, for example, which is a drawing activity that uses the metaphor of a river, its flows, its surroundings, and more, to illustrate a personal story in response to a prompt. And in our recent activities called TAG, which is the Teen Advisory Group, a group of young people within the Accelerate Hub within the CSSR, we wrote with the prompt was tell a story of how you came to be part of TAG, and all of us together drew a river of life, telling that story. So we do encourage them to share, but also to be mindful of how much you share and with whom. Because when we present our rivers of life to each other, you can choose how much of that drawing you are actually going to describe to the room, and how much of the drawing is actually just for yourself. You drew it, you said it, but you didn't have to articulate it to everyone. It's just for you. And so we make sure to mention that take-backs, especially when it comes to data collection, is always an option. So we try our best to normalize, even for a day, that taking a break from the workshop to cry a bit, to husa, to take a walk, to clear your head, or even to forfeit the day entirely is absolutely okay. But this also means that we need to have certain protocols, you could say, in place, like on-site psychosocial support with a counselor or psychologist. If the topic itself is sensitive or the group of young people has been considered with a more vulnerability, facilitators have to be trained in dealing with trauma. We have resources, but this is sometimes often finite, that we can offer young people. But what is more sustainable is that we work closely with guardians, with teachers, social workers, civil society organizations, and referrals for counseling counseling services that provide young people with continued access to care even after the workshops are complete. So finally, coming to my slide, in my experiences, safety and feeling safe refers to the comfort that young people can share with. It's about encouraging confidence in their contributions, but also holding them accountable to their own code of conduct. And most importantly, showing them that we, as the facilitators, we are regular people. Mm-hmm. We have experiences, we have feelings, we have vulnerabilities. And at the end of the day, safety is reciprocal. And I don't believe in safe spaces. I believe in safe spacing because I believe that it is an active and effortful attempt to care for one another. And so, bringing us to fun. When I thought of fun, I didn't add it because to do research with young people, it must be fun. It's not necessarily a prerequisite for doing research with young people. In fact, after lunch, during what we call the graveyard shift, it's older people who need energizers to keep their eyes open. So for us, fun is about reading the energy levels in the room. And in response, we shift the pace and duration of the activities. We insert fun energizers between engagement-heavy activities. We change the rest of the program sometimes just to ensure that we do not lose people's focus, but keep their presence and their participation going. So it's about creating space for enjoyment, for reflection, sometimes good competition, movement, and other ways that we can facilitate staying present. So in our experiences, feeling safe and having fun, they go hand in hand. There's time for serious activities and discussions, and there's time for fun. And what we do is we allow for spaces of decompression within the workshop day itself. So circling back, to the ethics of engagement, there's a lot that I couldn't cover, but I'm hoping that, it will be prompted in the questions and the discussions. But the main lessons I wanted to convey is how facilitating different groups of young people has shown that there's absolutely no formula. What I have learned, though, is that we as facilitators, we play a very large role in setting the tone for the workshops. If we show comfort with being silly, vulnerable, serious, lighthearted, then young people will try their best to kind of meet us on that level. And that's really all we want. So to conclude, the lessons learned, each of us kind of just gave two. The first one around psychosocial support is that the space that we are creating for them in the workshop Sometimes it's the very first time a young person encounters a space where they feel they can share, and that might, take them by surprise. And so what we do is ensuring that having a psychosocial support is absolutely essential. The other thing is that, we say young people often is spoken about as counterparts to adults. And with that comes hierarchy and different norms and values of the interactions between young people and older people. And so as a result, what we fear is that young voices may not be valued in other places. So it's important that when they do come to us, we actively encourage them, to value what they have to say, value their own experiences, and feel very confident in what they have to contribute. Finish us off.
Yes, thank you, Yusra. So it was very hard to come down to listing only 2 lessons learned from working with young people and being a young person myself. And I think I chose this 2 because it really speaks very truly to me in terms of I come with an understanding that most young people, the general thing about them, that okay, they go to school or varsity and all these settings, they're quite mentally demanding, and they leave you a bit vulnerable, and you feel like you're being judged, you're not the best student, or you're not doing good. So whenever you call them to meet for a workshop where you'll be speaking about other things, or where actually everybody's valued, it's such a different setting. And I always emphasize as a facilitator to be like, you know what, everybody has something to share, and we are all here. And whenever I say something, I also try to model it. By modeling it, if we are about to talk about sensitive topics or things that I will trigger emotions that make people a bit saddened or anything like that, it's very important to emphasize or make them aware, and always doing it with care as much as you can entail the skills to be with young people. But whenever there's engagement, the engagement needs to be done carefully with care, especially if you entail with this, you have the skills, but they need to trust that you are able or capable enough to receive the information, to receive the activities, to receive any kind of negative kind of clashes within the groups or anything like that. So it's a lot that as a facilitator you need to navigate. But one thing that stood out for me throughout the lessons, that everybody has something to share. And lastly, to close it off, is that it's very important for a facilitator to be flexible enough and to to have the knowledge or acknowledge diversity. And diversity comes in different forms. Diversity comes in anything whereby not only one thing is expected to be done by everyone. Diversity is when you are able to adapt and have space to come to accommodate what everybody brings to the plate. You don't always have to have the plate full, always leave a space to accommodate what was missing, was not there, and what could work best and what had worked best. So we want to thank you so much. We couldn't cover everything, but this was really exciting. And yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, both. Wonderful job. Great. So we have just about 10 minutes for questions and discussion, which isn't that much time, but I think it's enough potentially to field a few questions. I haven't seen anything come through in the chat, but if anyone would like to ask a question of any of our presenters, feel free to raise your hand or just unmute. So I'll just open the floor up now. And if no one has questions, I have one question that I can ask. Okay, Dr. Nyasulu, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for these very informative presentations. And indeed, we've learned a lot in 1.5 hours. So thanks to all the presenters. My question is in relation to the colleagues who presented some findings from Lebanon in terms of the effect of those trainings and engagements. Because definitely if it was an intervention, then it wasn't blinded. They knew that they're going through this type of intervention, and the others knew that they were not going through any intervention. Don't you think that would have biased their response in terms of, now my anxiety levels are lower or whatever? Over to you.
Hello, yes. So just to be clear, you're asking if you can first of all clarify your question, if you don't mind.
Oh, okay. My question is because the intervention group and the control group, they were not blinded. Like the intervention group, they knew that they are experiencing this type of intervention. So my question is, how do you think that influenced their responses, and how did you minimize that bias because of the fact that someone says, there's something happening, I need to respond positively, so that the implementers should feel better that it has achieved something. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for your question, first of all. Just to be clear that first of all, we had 3 schools. One of the schools was a control group. 2 other schools were experimental. And we only took high school students. So in the control school, basically, we had the high school students as control, and the 2 experimental groups, they were also high school students were experimental. So the experimental students, first of all, didn't know that we are doing that we have a control group. The control group also didn't know that we have an experimental group going on. That's one thing that was going on. And second of all, when it comes to sharing, so it was partly qualitative as well. We didn't force the students to mention that they actually felt better, for example, after the intervention was done. Actually, we gave them the questionnaire in the post-test after the intervention was done. And they even, while reading the items on the questionnaire, they were saying that, I can't believe that I'm answering this way on this item of the questionnaire. I can't believe that my well-being has improved that much on this item, for example. Like they didn't know why they actually changed or how much their life was affected until they actually saw the questions on the questionnaire after the intervention, and it came to them, it was like a surprise. Oh, I didn't know that I changed that much. I'm not sure if I answered to your question. Please let me know if I didn't.
Okay, thank you so much. There's clarity in your response. Thanks.
Thank you. Fabio, I think you had your hand up next. Go ahead. Oh, Mona, I don't know if you wanted to. Oh, sorry.
Yes,
I saw your hand go up quickly. Okay, one second.
Yeah. I just wanted to say as well, I just wanted to say that the questionnaire that we used was the TAIQ short form, which contains 30 items. So in terms of the reliability of the scale itself, the participants who took part, the actual reliability of the scale by itself is credible evidence as to their concrete improvement from stage 1 to stage 2, because it is highly reliable, it's highly used, it's validated across multiple studies. So in that aspect as well, there is no way in terms of like they could have I don't know, like faked it or something like that. So just to point that out as well from a technical standpoint as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Fabio, go ahead.
Christina, mine is not a question, but a comment, a consideration. First of all, congratulations to you, Christina, for the selection of these speakers. It really flew very well, I think. I really think that from my presentation, which was very general, to the very last, which was very detailed and specific, to the other 2, we really gave a good overview. And also, I would like to say that what I heard comforts a lot the framework I've been presenting. I think that most presentations were about space, the safe space, the importance of working in a participatory way around the safe space, which is what I believe is the most important foundation for meaningful youth engagement. Once you build on that, then you can do many things. And we just saw how much, like, you know, my presentation was easier, just a space, safe space, but then we saw all the implication, how complex and how much science and experience you need to put into that. But once you have that good foundation, that is a precondition, then you can do so many things meaningfully. You miss that, good luck. Chances that you can work meaningfully becomes much, much thinner. So thank you for all participants, and to you, Christina, for having put us together.
Thank you so much, Fabio. I appreciate that. And I was thinking the same thing. I think the space, it's almost conceptual space first and foremost. We need to get our heads around the fact that we need to create this space for young people. We need to have projects that actually engage young people at the very outset. But then there's also this physical space that comes in. There's also the space that you make for young people to be meaningfully contributing. So I think I agree that that's shown through every presentation very clearly. Mandy, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just to echo a lot of Fabio's sentiments, I thought that it was really, really well organized, and it was great to hear from different perspectives. I had sort of like a follow-up question for Mona and Ronnie around the tool. So I was going to ask what tool was used, but I now wanted to ask how that tool was implemented. So how did they fill in that tool? Was that like someone was asking them questions that they responded, or was it used through a tablet? Just wanting to understand that. And then I don't know if I missed this, but I wanted to understand a little bit more around the implementation timeline from what was the time period in which this was implemented, and were the same people coming multiple times, and were you able to record like the engagement level of engagement in terms of how often people came, so exposure to the intervention?
Okay. Yeah, sure. Thank you for your question, first of all. So basically, we had several validated and reliable questionnaire scales used in our questionnaire. It's not only the emotional intelligence questionnaire, but also the PHQ-9 for depression, GAD-7 for anxiety. We had the PEC scale, which is the profile of emotional competence. We have the brief cope, which is the coping, different mechanisms of coping. So all these are validated, used internationally as well. Some of them were translated and validated. Some of them were translated by us. And that's the first thing. If you want me to repeat these scales so that you write them down or anything, please let me know if you needed that. Otherwise,
I would say just go ahead, and then we can, because we have only a few minutes left, so maybe you can answer the rest of it first.
My follow-up question was just how they were implemented. Yeah, like did they fill them out?
Okay, so it was basically a printed questionnaire that they filled out. There were around 10 questionnaire scales in that questionnaire, and it was printed and they filled it out by themselves. It was in Arabic because that's the national language. Okay, and the time frame for the project, it was around 3 months, 2 sessions per week, and it's a 1-hour session per class.
Mona, do you want to go ahead and add something?
Yes, just a minor thing, because she asked about the frequency of the students, the same students. I think that was part of her question. Yes, so basically, most of the students on the very high frequency, they all came for the pre-test and the post-test. I'm sure we might have had some, I think the word is retention. Some people left, or some new people came, and those were all taken into consideration and removed from we removed their data from the data analysis part section. So, however, the results that we have are based on people who conducted the full, if you want, the full questionnaires from the pre-test to the post-test to the second post-test. So, yeah, I just wanted to make that clear as well.
Great, thanks so much. And Mandy has just asked a follow-up question in the chat if there's a publication available yet for this study.
It's still being, the manuscript is still being written. We still haven't published anything, but we're planning to publish several papers. We also included some neurological measures like HRV, heart rate variability, and neuron, basically, which will also be published as well, hopefully.
Great, we'll be on the lookout. Great, so we only have about 1 minute left, so I just thought I'll do a quick sum up of some of the themes, which I think we've already kind of started to shine through, but I would love to continue the conversation. If anyone in this session has questions that they want to ask to any of the speakers, feel free to get in touch with me or with Chanel in the Global Health Office. We'd be happy to pass on those questions and keep the conversation going. And I just thought I'd kind of sum up a few things that we've heard today. So I think, as Fabio mentioned just now, space and spacing, as you said, Yusra, is really a formative and critical cornerstone of this work, engaging young people. I think it's cutting across so many areas of how we engage with young people. I think mentorship and support are really critical aspects. Psychosocial support came up quite a lot, again, throughout different instances, and really allowing space for young people to take initiative as well. So mentorship that really enables young people to be empowered, identify their own potential, and take some autonomy in terms of their next steps. And I think one of the other interesting things that Fabio mentioned and others kind of reiterated on was the idea of brokering access. So really trying to then take some of these contributions into a space of meaning. I think, Mandy, you did a great job also thinking about what is the next step. Where does this youth research or academy enable young people to step in? And I think Roni and Mona, your roles as youth researchers also pulls that out. So I think we've heard, again, across all these speakers, the important role of kind of seeing that arc and seeing that continuity and sustainability of how you engage young people and how it sets them up for further pursuits. So just with that, I'd like to say thank you again. It was so great to have each of you take so much time out of your days to present, and I just wanted to extend my thanks to each of the speakers and also to the audience for staying tuned this whole time. There will be a recording made available on the Global Health Department website, and as I said, you can feel free to reach out with any further questions to me or Chanel in the Global Health office. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.
Have a nice day.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.